You people out of town, this is going to be a prologue, not fit for you showing to children. I was going to say some words to the Atlanta group, but you people out of town, you might as well be welcome to it also. And I'll leave you just a little spot so that you can show however you're using it, the Kyroots, and then skip over this and go to the regular meeting. The thing is I wanted to announce the good news. And that is that nobody has to come back here. Not here, not in any other city, at any other time. But of course I am responding now to instant events taking place. And it pops up once a year, and so I wanted to give you the good news and really remind everybody, you do not, I repeat, you do not have to come back. Is that not a relief? I have a tendency, since everyone likes to hear gossip, here's one. I have a tendency to adopt. I have a tendency as part of the job makeup of this. I have a tendency to take in anybody that shows any real interest in this. Anybody that even resembles family. Of course, you newer people know this, that I'll just about take you on face value if you show any interest. Just any interest. Just by almost showing up, I'll just treat you like you might as well be family. It is not from some sham form of naivete. It's not any kind of trick. It is just the most efficient way to operate. Plus, I am almost helpless when doing it. That if anybody shows real interest, because you can't really fake, as strange as this is. So I end up having to announce this kind of good news periodically, that although some of you who believe that you have been truly attracted here, I just want to assure you, point blank, looking right into the little camera eye, that you do not ever, ever have to come back. There is no expectation whatsoever, as all of you should know by now, for any sort of public show of your interest in this. I don't require that you sign any papers, and I don't require in any way that ordinarily takes place out in the city when somebody seems to have taken up with some organization or some body, that there is some kind of public show. If nothing else, if you're not going to shave your head and put dots up here, you at least get a t-shirt, saying, Buddha's my guy, or something. I do not, that's not even in the repertoire here, but there is an absolute requirement for some sort of personal show. That is, that I be able, after some length of time, after taking you in, after just taking you at face value, that there then comes a time, and the time has come now, I wouldn't be bringing up this good news tonight. For at least, as I said, it started off with the people here in Atlanta. But it has pertinence to you people in other towns. But there has to be a kind of personal show of interest, of commitment, of enjoyment, of benefit from this. If I do not see it, then that's when I announce the good news. I have got to be able, after some length of time, after just taking you at face value, after taking you in somewhat as a unheard of before lost third uncle, that you just kind of show up, and I say, come right in. Come on in, and for a long time, I don't really say anything to you. Don't ask you for anything, don't ask you where you came from, how you got here, what you think of me so far. One thing about taking in people, one thing about the family herd of this strange tributary sort of rounding itself up in somebody's lifetime when this pops out, I will restate the obvious right quick. It should be obvious. Is for whatever reason, it's just again the job requirements, and it's just genes. Neither you and I have to take any credit for being genius. You can if you want to, but don't bug me with it. As I personally have absolutely no need for your approval, for your applause, for your appreciation, for your money, for your public declaration of interest. Nothing. The question is, how do you need this? Not me, but this. If you can find somebody else, then the good news is you don't have to come back here and you can go somewhere else. You people end up a sizable number, some number of you, end up saying here, and you people writing me from out of town, saying in essence, and some of you point blank, that boy, I am glad to finally realize that I do belong here. You say that, and then you turn right around, and either it happens here, or I get it from out of town, I belong here. How glad I am that I found this. And then, for some reason, you can't find time to be here. That your interest seems to wane. And sort of a side effect, I still find it of interest, it pops up in the great land of so-called opportunity, Southern California. I keep getting notes from you people, it pops up once a year or so, that you people can't even financially keep yourselves together out there. So you can't even hold what would seem to be the very basic glue to hold yourselves into this. And after a certain length of time, I quit treating you like a freeloading uncle or aunt, and I begin to look around. I begin to see that there is a pattern of some people not being here very often, people being absent too much, if you want it another way. And if I bring it out, either here or if I mention it by letter or by phone to the other cities, then the people involved, people will immediately, with great enthusiasm, showing how on the ball they are, they'll immediately write me, telling me, sometimes in great, great boring detail, as to why they've had to miss so many meetings. And, of course, it always, well, it never fails to bring tears to my eyes to hear these stories. The other night, Wednesday night, for you people out of town, what brought up the good news again for this year, I happened to walk down the stairs, and in a sense, it looked like a goddamn sick bay down there. And I'd already told you people on nights that I was letting the group present some programs that I did not want people leaving here. I told the old group that specifically before we started this, and I told all of you. For those of you who are really interested, I came very close to throwing out 2 people on the spot Wednesday night when I walked down the stairs. One from the old group, been around a long time, and one of you new people. Was that close? Because a good example is always a good example. A lot of you out of the older group, out of the newer people, and some of you people out of town that I have not even seen. I can see you. But too many of you people look sickly. As they call it in the South sometimes, you look peaked. But I literally walk downstairs, and I know that sometimes, well, several of you, so that you don't think I've forgotten it, that have been literally, physically ill of late, have been sitting downstairs and listening to me talk by way of the intercom, which is all right. But other than those several people, I walk downstairs, and there are people laid out, people sitting in chairs, their head back, as though they had just got through running 2 triathlons today, or that they had taken over where Hercules dropped his labors thousands of years ago, that the weight of the world in some way is upon you, or God knows what. But I'm telling you, too many of you people, and you I know, had better go home and look in the mirror. And you look awfully peaked. You look sickly. Something's wrong with you. Maybe you're not eating right. Maybe you don't belong here. Maybe it's beginning to catch up with you. But you should literally, every one of you, because of those of you to whom this does not apply, then it won't hurt you, but you should go home and try and take an objective look, a clinical look. Try and just sneak into the bathroom and real quick look at the mirror and see if you're looking right in the face of somebody that looks kind of poorly. That's another Southern medical term. You look as though the energy and almost the life is drained out of you. But as I said, maybe this will help some of you. The good news for me to announce again that there is no way, there is no fashion, no requirement whatsoever that any of you has got to ever come back here again, here in Atlanta or in any other city. Never. Because this peaked look, this sickly, this poorly looking complexion, the dullness of the eyes, the slack mouth, the laying down, collapsed. At 7:30 in the evening, people 25 years old, or of course I don't really care how old you are, something is drastically wrong now that I've started paying back attention to you people individually. To be attempting to do this, when if you are not in some way getting enthused by this, if you are not in some way benefiting, if you are not in some way understanding that the revolution is is not somebody trying to get well. This is not a wellness cure for any city illness. This is not a wellness cure by any means. I'm not being funny with that. This is in no wise any kind of psychiatric treatment, and is not to cure you from being poorly. It's not to cure you from having no interest in life. But I am now faced with seeing too many of you, if you don't understand poorly and peaked. Some of you look like on nights here that somebody has dragged you to a high school class or to some boring seminar on real estate or a wake. And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to put up with that shit. Stay home forever. Stay home and do something interesting. I'm not being sarcastic. Watch TV, play tennis. Do something. But some of you about to get your ass thrown out of here, and I mean forever. I don't ever want to see you again. I don't ever hear your name. I don't ever want to hear from you. This is a job. This is a happy business. I got no particular choice, if I wanted one, in doing this. And there is always some amount of family roaming the face of this earth that enjoys this. And this goes up and down, peaks and valleys. It goes in the cycles. It is not immune from the same kind of cycles that runs life itself. I know them well. I have to deal with them with you people. But we have hit a good, astoundingly handsome, copious valley. And I just want to tell you, those of you who don't know, here in and out of town, and I can do this from out of town, some of you are going to be surprised maybe that you suddenly get a letter and you've never even seen me in person, and I'm going to tell you goodbye. That if you are not getting something out of this, if you feel in any way, we don't have to debate this. You don't have to write me. Don't tell me why you're leaving. I don't care. Don't tell me why you decided it's not what you thought it was. I don't care. You don't belong here. If in any way you feel like this is a burden, how in the hell can you get here 3 times a week? To hell with you. I don't want you here. Not at all. Not mad. Not putting a curse on you, even if I could. Not wishing you any harm. But I'm telling you, don't come back, because a handful of you I'm about to throw out. Some of you newer people. As long as you've been here, I took you at face value, but as long as you've been here, you haven't changed. You look like that you are sick. You look like somebody has beaten you all day, and you look like, now that I've started turning around and looking you dead in the eye periodically and passing you down the hallway and looking right at you, some of you look as though your mother has dragged you here. Of course, if I put it to you that way, if I wanted to discuss it, which I'm not with some of you, you might say, well, it was more like you feel as though that life had dragged you here, or I did. But remember this, I have not put drugs in your coffee. I have not hypnotized you people on tape. I want you to remember, this should be a relief to some of you if I don't throw you out tonight or next time I see you. For some of you to remember, we'll be meeting night after this, that you don't have to come back ever again. You're just absolutely free. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. What a relief. But some of you I am absolutely sick of. Not in the ordinary sense. Sick. I'm just sick. I'm just going to tell you not to come back, and that's the end of it. I won't remember your name or your face the next day. You're not part of this. Do not drag around. You're not doing me a fucking favor. You're not doing anybody a favor. This is not a duty. This is not a club. This is not some kind of boot camp, even though I use the terms revolution and warfare. Strange. If you could just use your yellow circuit at the minimal level I keep kidding about, you would have to ask yourself, go down the bathroom. If it's doing damn good, I'd stop now and say, let's take a break. Long enough for all you'd run the bathroom in the mirror and see if you're one of the ones that look poorly, if you look sickly, if you look tired, if you look put upon. Then the question you should be, if just your yellow circuit would just operate the way that the Greeks even imagined it would operate. You'd ask, why am I coming here? What am I doing here that I come in and I drag my feet and I act as though that I'm doing somebody a favor? Or boy, if I can just get through this. When the handful that really has kept this going in this particular city, sort of the heart of the old group, put it to you that way, used to periodically, as much as they felt right to, try to ask for more to do, or is there any chance we could meet more than once a week? And so I did it. Now it's up to 3 times a week, and I look around. And in a sense, I've got to arrange my life to do this. Assuming I had some other hobby or somewhere to go. I wanted to go somewhere fascinating like Pensacola. I am here, always here, no matter what it takes. You don't know where I am on the off nights, but I am always here. And then for some of you to say, by word and deed, throughout the years, and now some of you throughout the months, I belong here. God, I'm glad I found this. This is it. I'm convinced. And I look around, I see you once a week. And then sometimes the once a week I see you, your jaws begin to get slack and you're on the verge of yawning or taking a nap. Don't come back. This is it. Do not come back. It's good news. You do not have to come back. That's how I wanted to start the good news. That's the end of that. A continuation of some that I was talking in general night before last, the last taping, about what could be said in response, just in general, amongst us if we were truly family and good friends. That, what is this? What is a revolutionist? What is the revolution, as I'm calling it? What is this thing, whatever it's been called forever, and what will be called after we're gone? Who knows? Somebody like me will make up another name. Might be one of your kids make up a new name for it. A continuation also from last time. I want to point out that perhaps the yellow circuit based data that all of you should recall above all, as far as yellow circuit data, is the fact that a revolutionist, if you become one, you know it. Because for one thing, you'll know this, that she knows that everybody else, from here down in you, everybody else, that everything everybody else believes is incorrect, and so is its opposite. That which can be put into some form of words, that which you can freeze dry into memory, at least pushed to the edge of your ordinary shelf, that which can truly be spoken of as a kind of clinical yellow circuit activity. This is perhaps the info that would be best to recall. For one thing, this is not the reason, but for one thing, all of you should have some glimpse of the fact this cannot, in a 3D universe, in the 3D world of ordinary consciousness, can never be perceived. Never. That, even though it's not the only reason, should give a very alert person, it should act as some kind of yellow circuit smoke detector, that how can it be, if I am being as valid and straightforward as I always have been, for me to point out that everything that everybody ordinarily believes is incorrect. It just is. And so is its opposite. In the city, that is worse than insanity. In the city, that's vapor lock. In the city, that is taking out the necessary tolerance in the living machine, in the living, growing machine of life, so that things can move. Because in the city, that is at your level of consciousness, at city level, to say that something is incorrect, that I believe, something I've done, I had faith in, something that I would even back up with my assault unit, that back up with a backup unit of talking about it, musing about it, writing about it, thinking about it, that all of that is wrong. To see it for yourself, incorrect. Let me sick myself. Incorrect. But in the city, the only thing that you've got after that is what? Well, its opposite then is either correct, or its opposite then is the place to establish some beachhead, because the correctness, the answer, assuming that mine was fallacious, then the answer is somewhere nearby. Now, I'm just being magnanimous and playing with words, because in the city, ordinary consciousness is, if it is absolutely confronted, if it believed or was affected by somebody, in this case me, saying everything that everybody ordinarily believes is incorrect, and you went, all right, I take that with must have some validity. And if I just left it at that, or if you read it in a book, if it was left at that, then the area, obviously you've got some interest in it, or you wouldn't have some belief in it. So you've got some interest, and what are you left with? If you pull away, that which you currently believe. If I state, or something made you believe that you should consider it, that anything you believe about this is incorrect, then what are you left with? All right? I've been looking at it this way, so all right, I'll take your word, or at least I'll try it, so I'll look this way. Therefore, everything in the city, the machinery continues to move. The tolerance is there. The eyes overlap in a certain way, and there is room for tolerance. That is, there is room for an apparent change, that is, to turn the coin over, to turn a card over, to take an opposite view, to stand up and say there's nothing in the world like sports. It makes life worthwhile. And the rest of humanity, the other half, stands up and says sports is uncivilized. It is a sign of low intelligence. It's worse than a waste of time. If there's anything that you could use that you should remember above all that could be put into yellow circuit packets, it is perhaps the fact, not the belief, not the idea, not the theory, but the fact that everything that everybody believes is not correct. And neither is its opposite. Besides this being important, absolutely necessary revolutionary data, let me also point out that this fact, not this belief, not this idea, not this dream, but this fact, besides being necessary revolutionary data, is also a kind of energy that you can use to help it. Is that Christopherson philosopher said that in the city can help you make it through the night. It can help you make it through the city life. This kind of information, not just in the necessary revolutionary sense, but in city affairs, that among others, 2 or 3 that we've already talked about before. Let me throw them in, but that would be one of the prime ones, just in city affairs. Right now, as much as you can separate, forgetting doing this, that there you're just suddenly caught again in the city, you're having to deal with ordinary people. That information, that energy, can help you make it through the city. That everything the people you're dealing with, everything they believe, no, it doesn't matter what, it's a short fact. Anything they believe is not correct, and neither is its opposite. Take that along with another great one, especially in the city. Not only is this necessary revolutionary information, but again, it's the kind of energy you can use in the city to help you get through it, to help you get through it efficiently. And that is that the world is big enough for everybody. That is just butter magic. That's WD-40 magic in the city, to actually be able to remember that. I'm not even pushing it far enough into it begin to affect your emotional behavior and your feelings. But just to be able to remember, just to be able to say that there you are in the midst of the city, and people stepping on your toes, kicking you in your private parts, messing up your hair, bumping into you, shouting out things that are somewhere between incomprehensible and incomprehensibly dumb. So just remember that, all right, all of that may be. I may be drugged almost back to the city level right now. I'm surrounded so deeply right now with dumbasses and Philistines that I'm back to their level. All right, be that as it may, right now it's all I can do to catch a revolutionary breath. If you could just remember that I may be surrounded by scorpions, dumb scorpions, Philistines, rednecks from Alabama, New Jersey, Romania, be that as it may, if I could just remember, the world is big enough for everybody. Of course, in the city, note your own nervous system does not want to remember that, does not want to even think about that. Of course, you can put it another way, that yeah, you say that and it sounds like a great axiom. But Jesus, you can't remember some axiom when somebody's stepping on your pecker. Some dumb people are doing dumb things. You can't remember all that. Well, let me ask you. You're supposed to, most of you people, finished high school. I get that impression. And you're going to tell me that you can't decide to remember something? That if I said it would be of great value whenever you're about to be mad, if you just remember purple onions, just trust me. And you say, well, sure, I can do that. I think it's dumb, but I'll try it. I'll do it. But notice, and some of you could. But notice it comes to things like remembering. Just forget any kind of emotional backup to this, any kind of metaphysical or strange reality behind this. The impossibility almost of just physically remembering the words that say the world is big enough for everybody. For one thing, you can't be mad at dumbness and remember those words even. It's going to either interfere with the words, or the words are going to interfere with you being mad at the dumbness. It's like being in the middle of a nice little step and you trip. Getting, in a good little step, you're about to maybe dance somebody backwards, at least in your imagination, these dumb people. You're about to give them a little dance backwards and maybe a little knee up in there. And you do this and suddenly you get a leg tremor. That's what it's like. Who the hell wants to think the world's big enough for everybody? That may be true, except for this son of a bitch. Not him. I'll think about that later. I have met the exception. As much as some of you got out of that when I first did it and laid on it for a night or two, it's awfully tempting for me to want to hang around that area one more time to at least try and get you to go back and hang around it. Because it is not some pleasant axiom, because you people know I'm not pleasant and I'm not in charge of axioms. It doesn't have some hidden religious thing. I'm not simply trying to restate love your neighbor as yourself. If I simply wanted to restate something already been handled, I'd restate it. This is different. It's not got any hidden spiritual meanings. It's just a fucking fact that the world is big enough for everybody. And if you don't like it, you can get away from them. And you don't have to go take a course how to get away from them. The world's big enough not only for everybody, the world's big enough, the tacit part, the world's big enough for everybody and you. And if you don't like the rest of them, it's almost God's own simple way to get away from them. Yeah, but you don't know how dumb they are. I got to stick around and point out how dumb they are. The world is big enough for everybody. Remember, if you're surrounded by dumbness, not just one or two dumb people, maybe you are one of the people that just surrounded, maybe the Philistines are holding some kind of conference for the decade and they've all moved around you, that you've attracted them like Stone Mountain or the big chicken in Marietta attracts UFOs. That's what I heard. So maybe you personally are surrounded, but remember this, damn it. Real cheap. I know about it. There is cheap property in Montana, Wyoming, still parts of Arkansas. Not surprising, in Mississippi. There are places that you can go that those dumbasses can't get to you. And unless you're equally a dumbass, you don't leave a forwarding address. They can't even write you and say dumb things. But do people do that? Not on your sweet ass, do they? No, not in the city. They hang around and holler, and what they're hollering is, this city ain't big enough for me and you dumb people. And how dumb can you be when it's obviously not true? It is big enough for you and the dumb people, as witnessed by the fact that we've got you and we've got the dumb people. And they're going to outlast you. All right, they're going to last as long as you are. So for me to say that it can literally help you make it through city life, help you make it through the city nights, notice, again, people don't want to make it through the night. People don't want to make it through the city. People who say, I want to overcome, I want to learn how to deal with life. Hell, in the city, the way life is wired up, it's not your fault. Well, you people, it's your fault now that you know about it. For the ordinary people, it's not their fault. Life has simply wired them up. But they don't want to overcome this. They don't want to beat these kind of odds that they feel like are stacked against them. The truth is, they don't even want to fucking cope with it. They want to talk about it. They want to sing, help me make it through the night. They want to sing, I can't make it through the night. Or they want to sing, I can't make it through the night again for many more years. Baby, baby. A couple more things while I'm here that not only are some of the real basic, necessary, revolutionary facts, but again, closely connected to this since I'm here, things that literally, although that's not the purpose of this kind of activity, but will literally help you make it through the city nights. Some of the others. very closely connected to this, is to remember, when everybody else says something to you, by the time you hear it, they've already forgotten it. So what have they said to you? And of course, for people, one of the great areas of concern about what people said to you is what they called you, what name they put upon you, whether it be literally in one word or two words, but by their addressing of you, by their treatment of you, they're naming you, they're putting a label on you. By the time people do that, by the time my great old Alabama truckers remember going by and hollering out at you, "Fuck you, fatso." By the time, just almost instantaneously, you think, by the time you can come to your wits with a clever repartee like, "Fuck you too," by the time you can do that, they've already forgotten you. If you could stop reality and run the great movie projector backwards and bring them back, playing with reality, and you said, "Did you hear what I just hollered?" And he said, "No." I hollered out, "Well, fuck you too." And they'd go, "Why'd you do that? Here, have a beer. Calm down." And you think, "Well, you're the guys that did it to me." And then they might go, "Oh, you mean back? Are you the guy who was, jogging along back there, way back there?" "What do you mean way back there? It was just a few feet." "Oh, well, hell. Oh, is that you?" "Yeah." "Okay, here, have 2 beers. We got to go." That's what it amounts to. But in the city, does anybody want to hear that? No. Can you hear that? Not hardly. I mean, I can laugh when you make all these jokes about guys going by and pick up trucks and drunk and hollering, "Fuck you, fatso." Yeah, I hear that. But do you hear it later? When you get a phone call from your mother, your first wife won't know where the alimony check is, from your boss calling you in and says, "You remember the memo I sent around last Tuesday?" The kind of info that you can use to get through the city, also related to that, is right there at the door of this, is the fact that everybody else, since some of you, we'll just say all of you have had one glimpse of this, but to remember that with everybody else, their consciousness is the last to know what they're doing. And yet you hold them responsible. To remember that there's nobody on this planet that you're going to run across in the city that has any idea what they're going to say or do next. And there you are, you and everybody else, of course. I say you like I'm speaking to you individually, but remember, I'm speaking to somebody else individually. So when I say you individually, you take it as you and the rest of the world's population. And of course, anybody else listening, they take it as being them and the rest of the world's population, including you. The rest of them have no idea what they're going to say or do next, but there you are, all of you individual yous hearing this, that belong in this. There you are, as though you're some kind of wired up with a cheap makeup job of one of these, what do they call them, sword and sorcerer movies, girded for action, poised, waiting at all times to be attacked by the slings and arrows of outrageous dumbness, waiting for the rest of these people. But you've had one glimpse, I'm assuming all of you, of that startling fact. If you haven't, not a single swinging one of you has ever let me know when we keep asking, what are you going to say next? Of course, that'd be proof that you don't belong here for any of you to say, "Hey, I got that one figured out. I know what I'm going to say next." I'm telling you, get back to the city. Not only are they probably going to name a water treatment plant after you, you can probably get elected mayor, perhaps governor, because you're in the wrong place. So the fact is, all of you know that there is no real answer. There's only a shock to my question, what are you going to say next? At the level at which life has produced your nervous system, if there's an extra piece, there's that one extra gene that makes you part of the family of this, and you belong here, there's that one extra gene that can get a glimpse, and nobody else can, of its own nervous system. And the truth is, that nervous system has no idea what it's going to say next, and the son of a bitch lives to be 70 years old, makes money, loses money, gets married, gets divorced, gets elected to a public office, moves up in a company, becomes a public speaker, becomes a powerful figure that people come to listen to, and that nervous system doesn't know what it's going to say next. It just goes. Nobody can deal with that in the city. Nobody. Nobody. But for you to remember that that's not true just with me. That's true with everybody. And yet there I stand, continually, eternally poised. All right, what are you people going to do to me next? Hell, they don't know. And there you stand. What are you going to say to me next? They got no idea. But as soon as it's said or done, you're ready to pounce. You're ready to be hurt. They've already forgotten what it was. They didn't plan to do it. The opposite of what they did would not satisfy you. Pause. A few more things I started talking about. I was just getting close to the other night. Since I'm talking on these lines, whether I get into this or not. But some of you might be able to take this and run on a ways and map out some areas by yourself. That is, this casual conversation of what could I might say about the revolutionists just staying around talking. A couple more things. One I just said, and I'm just going to say it again, since we're going to end up running out of tape tonight, is the real revolutionists would forget things, would not remember things that other people seriously remember. By other people, I mean sooner or later everybody in the city. Your family, your friends, you. The kinds of things that they remember, you forget about. The kinds of things that they take very seriously. They write about them. Great moments in mortal literature are based upon it. But on the other hand, the revolutionists would be able to recall many things that nobody else, that other people never noticed the first time around. The things that just happens and they never even notice it. It's not a problem of trying to remember it. They didn't notice it the first time. So they can't remember it. I'll leave it to you to guess that I know that I said that night before last, and I said it again. So assuming that I'm not getting into senility, and assuming that perhaps there is one exception of people not knowing what they're going to say next, I knew I was going to say that next. And I knew that I said it night before last, and I said it again. Something else. There's a way in which you could see that the revolutionists would be living day-by-day life, including, or not excluding, ordinary city affairs that all of us have to deal with. That there's a way in which you could see that the revolutionist either is living a life that is kind of likened to a calm within a storm, or at other times living a life that is like a willful storm within a useless calm. There's a way, something else I'm going to mention that is worth a lot more, but I'll just say it tonight. That there's a similar verbal piece of energy that I could say that there's a way in which a revolutionist could willfully use the feast, famine, feast, famine, feast, famine, blah, blah, blah cycle. Willfully. Whenever I say willfully use something, in case I must remind you, I don't mean just willfully use that which is taking place, but willfully means that you could produce it yourself, some form of it, some form of a kind of operation, perhaps, kind of occurrence that ordinary people, your ordinary consciousness goes, whoa, boy, if I could just get away from that, it'd be a break. I consider that would be a boon to my existence. And so to say willfully means it may be something that from city level down in your own nervous system may be saying, I'd be glad to be rid of that, to be freed from that. Such as a feast, famine cycle in its full ramifications, which you're going to have to carry it yourself tonight. But a revolutionist could use such a cycle willfully, produce it even when it wasn't going on. A revolutionist, something else I want to throw in tonight. A revolutionist would also do this. Could slash would. So you can sketch it out as something that strikes you at all in either direction you want to until I ever get back around to it. But a revolutionist would slash could hug, say, I love you to those who need it, and then forget all about it. I think I'll leave it. Well, wait a minute. I'll give you a couple more. A revolutionist, something else. In the midst of all of that I've talked about, a revolutionist would actually be supremely indifferent to himself. And I have a question that somebody popped on to me before I walked out here tonight that is so. I'm going to stick it in right here. Regarding the dominant-submissive dance and dynamic and the male-female sexual relationship in this kind of activity, in what we're doing. Is it possible for the dance itself to be bypassed by both parties? And short of that, what is the best for the man, best for the woman, etc.? Does everybody understand the question? They're asking in the sexual relationship with people involved with this. Then in regards to that kind of sexual relationship between a man and a woman, in light of all I've been talking about and whatever you have been able to see for yourself in this dominant-submissive dance, could they bypass it? And if not, etc., what do I have to say about it? So just the question. All right. Actually, in this life, and as the part of you that's going to still live in the city, which to some degree you are living in the city, that is your birthright. Even if you don't look at it as a birthright, it's your birth curse. It is where your lungs function. It is where your blood flows from. It is where you were born. And it is as though there is a line cut here. And that this part of you, no matter what happens, no matter that you just blossom out and your nervous system just turns into little heretofore unknown rose bushes and petunias and just, but from here down, you're in the city. That's where you're born, you're going to die, and to some degree you're going to stay in the city. You got to deal with that. So at that level, what I want to tell you is actually the dynamic, the dominant-submissive dance cannot be, and I like the person's word, I wouldn't have thought of that, I don't think, to talk about, but it can't actually be bypassed. I understand the basis of the question, it's good, but it can't actually be bypassed, even with two people involved with this. To take that as apparently the person was hoping or thinking that that might be close to an exception. In the 3D world, you cannot bypass the dominant-submissive dance. Whether it be two people involved with this, whether it be a sexual relationship, whether it be a business relationship, whether it be any relationship. Now the parties can do this, the revolutionary parties. Now we're back to talking about two people involved with this. They can certainly do this. They can acknowledge the dance. They can map it out together, individually. They can even talk about it. Remember I said revolutionary partners. They could visit it. They could kick it. They could give it a little push. They could even, instead of going to Disneyland, they could take a little trip with it. They could, in fact, temporarily even trade it in. But you can't actually, in the 3D world, you can't actually bypass, even though it be two people involved with this, and even though it be a sexual relationship, or the question could have been between friends, between two men in here. Just they're being friends, or two guys in here, or two women in here that would decide to try to go in business. Is there some way to bypass it? Now also notice this. There is a tacit question also in here, or a tacit message that feels that the dominant-submissive dance is in some way less than totally appropriate for two people in here. Well, the person didn't say that, but follow me. That unless you felt that something was amiss, you would not have such a question. That there must be some better way to do this. Now, how many times have I pointed out, it was just night before last, that city consciousness and everybody is wired up as soon as they hear these kind of terms. In my description of dominant-submissive, is, oh, well, something should be done about that. Not only can nothing be done about it, nothing should be done. Because it is not judgmental. And the person dancing backwards is just as happy as a pig in slop. Well, their alternative is to die. But plus they're already wired up to dance backwards. So they're just as happy dancing backwards as the average dominant person is dancing dominantly. Now in here, I still understand that the person, and this I'm sure that several other couples here and perhaps out of town liked the question as soon as I read it out and was hoping that, yeah, I wondered about that, or how can we treat each other better? All right. In every situation, somebody has got to dominate. And when I say somebody has got to, I don't mean this is some kind of theoretical situation that you got to wait around and decide, all right, now somebody's got to dominate because that's the way life is arranged. There is no problem. None. It's not even possible. This kind of problem does not exist. It does not arise. It is, of course, that makes it one of the great city problems since it doesn't exist, because it can turn into a horrendous problem. But the problem does not exist if two people suddenly find themselves in a situation, in a relationship, sexual, any kind, just a relationship that, oh, here we are. Well, you know, I used to know this guy that was kind of a weird philosopher, and he said that all situations in the city normally had one party dominant, one submissive. So, you want to be dominant and me be submissive, or what? You want to take turns? That does not happen. The closest resembling that, I'll say it again right quick, I'll describe, is like two passing parties. Just something that there's almost no emotional involvement. Oh, hey, you got the time? Yeah, 2:30, thanks. That's the closest. Any other relationship, you don't have to discuss it. You don't have to wonder, when's it going to pop out? Which one's going to be dominant? Which one is going to be submissive? That was preordained in a sense. Now, this is not true, but in a sense, it seems sequential for me to say it. But it's not true. There is no forward and backwards. There is no before and after. But it would seem like this, that was preordained, and that's why you were drawn together. Not conversely, not, oh, well, here we are drawn together, so who's going to be dominant and who's submissive? Or how can we tell? Or is it going to change? Is it open right now in the early stages to change? It wasn't open to any kind of change. The situation is what brought you two together. Every situation is going to be based upon a dominant-submissive dynamic. But two people involved with this, back to something a little more specific. Just because that is a fact, and just because you can't get away from it, just because you're not supposed to get away from it, you wouldn't have a relationship unless one of you was dominant and one of them was submissive, relative to each other over the long haul, which is another way of saying, if you could see it over or from a four-dimensional view, if you could see it. But there you are drawn together. Two people that seem to be interested in this. And it would seem, of course, to be, not incorrectly, it would seem to be an unusual. And to some of you, those of you that won't run through each other like pigs, like pork through ducks, it should be sort of a precious. You should guard, because there's only so many of you going to be involved with this in my lifetime. And those of you that's fucked and lived with about half the women in here, you're going to run out. Vice versa for the women in other cities. But back to the situation that here you are together, I was going to say something a little more practical. Just because you are in a dominant-submissive dance, there's no need to push each other around. And of course, that's especially for whichever one seems to be dominant. And of course, that's especially true for that one that seems to be submissive, that might won't, that's already wired up. That their genes may say, oh, come on, push, push. A little harder, push a little harder. Couldn't you push maybe with your fist? There's no need to push each other around. There's no need to beat up on each other. And I don't mean this. There's no need to beat up on each other dancing and that you whine about, why don't you get in step? Or the other person whines, and what they're saying is, every time we get to this point on the stage, on the dance floor, every time you always do this. Would you stop it? You're driving me crazy. You've been doing that for 20 years or 20 months or 20 minutes. That's beating up on each other. Or you hold me too tight. You hold me too tight. Or that person, you don't hold me tight enough. You don't hold me tight enough. You're always looking off at other couples. You're always looking off at other women while you're dancing. That's beating up on each other. And it's not right or wrong. And it's not limited, or that's not the inherent problem of the dominant dancer or the submissive dancer. People involved with this, if it's going to be looked at as revolutionary parties, it's both people's responsibility. That's why I said the first thing to do is acknowledge it. But there's no doubt, here we are trying to struggle for some kind of not sarcastic freedom that life makes people talk about in the city, but some kind of new growth, some kind of new freedom that there's not even any word for. And so here we are, and it's obvious, just from the moment one. I assume you see it, that I'm the dominant one. It's not good or bad, I'm not better. But the first words we said to each other, I said, "Hey, let's go out tonight." You went, "Oh, okay." Or the woman said, "Hey, you don't mind a woman asking a man out for a change, do you?" And you might have went, "Well, no, I like it." It's simply a fact that you should be able to acknowledge, right, one of us, apparently right now, is the dominant dancer the dominant amount of the time. To acknowledge it. And then to realize that that does not give me in any way I am not. Now this is tied up to the inherent wiring of people in the city that dominant people do want to dominate. Dominant people want to dominate more than they do. Submissive people, they'll get all the domination they can, and then they'll begin to think, I wonder if somebody could dominate me more. Who could push me around, make me dance faster backwards? That kind of thing. For two people involved with this, you acknowledge it. But then you understand that this does not give either one of us any sort of license to push the other one around, to beat up on the other one. That as far as the dominant submissive dance that very likely brought us together, you may attribute it to, well, as some kind of fate of the cosmos because we're both here. That may or may not be, but generally what brings people together are what is known in the business, at least my business, as the horny molecules. Lust genes. The desire for life to continue humanity, because right now it's a fairly important part of life's body. Not perhaps as important as his wallet, but a fairly important part. All situations, including a sexual relationship between two people in here, require that there be C and D visibly going on, and it requires that there is a dominant submissive dance going on, or your relationship is doomed for less than about 3 seconds. You've got to acknowledge it, but you cannot let it run you any more than you would let ordinary things run you back in the city. That is, ordinary city consciousness let anything run you. Those are the kinds of things that you probably would already, at least theoretically, denounce. City greed, ordinary anger, ordinary mechanical prejudice. You cannot let the dominant-submissive dynamic, the dance between people, the dance that is inherent, that is necessary for all situations to exist at the 3D level, you cannot let the dance run you. At the 3D level, one of you is dancing forward and dancing backwards, but you cannot let the dynamics as it goes on in the city to make both of you dance backwards. That suddenly city consciousness is dancing forward and both of you now become one person. Not really, of course, but you become as one person that now life is making both of you dance backwards. And you begin to hate each other. You stay at each other's throat, that everything that is wrong, all the dances you don't like, all the little steps, you blame the other person. But now the other person, even the one that was submissive vis-a-vis you, or the one that was dominant vis-a-vis you, is now as submissive as you are. You're both dancing backwards. You're both dancing backwards to the mechanical level of your own genes. You're both dancing backwards vis-a-vis in regards to do-si-do, the city level and strength of your own molecular makeup. And you'll take it out on each other. You're supposed to. You'll beat up and push each other around. You'll keep complaining. Why do you do that? The submissive one will tell the dominant, why do you keep doing that? And the dominant one don't, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. And the truth is they didn't. Life is dancing them both backwards. If you can acknowledge that, if you get a glimpse of that, then there is a kind of, not just thinking of action, but a kind of action available to people involved with this. It's not real easy. Oh, all right, why make you feel bad? It's real easy. Just acknowledge it and don't let life dance both of you backwards. And don't blame on each other and whine on each other and push each other around for what life is doing to both of you, which is making you both dance backwards to it. All right, now, I want to hit a couple of things back to my great diagrams of an individual as being a state. You remember that? and all of my... Let's give it some visuals tonight. Nobody's seen it in 2 or 3 days. A man is a state, then the city in here, ordinary consciousness, everything that you are wired up to be. Then out here, the bushes, the area, the unknown area where the revolution is taking place. In the city is a dominant figure. There is always, or sometimes referred to as a king, a tyrant, a ruler. And then in the city is the, with a capital Z and a capital P, the people. It seems to be, the dominant seems to be one's personality, one's I, something that seems to be reporting to life, something that seems to be reporting to you, something that seems to always be complaining, something that seems to always be trying to either crack a whip or look for a whip to crack on the rest of these peons. The hoi polloi, the great unwashed masses, the people. That is, all the parts of you that you don't approve of at any given time are your people. All right, now we're up to date, right? Up to speed. Here is something, as always, why I love that, why you should enjoy it. This is something that has been used in the city, that is, by life, in what appears to be external circumstances. And as always, I can grab that and I can pull it in such a way that it will not cry uncle. It hollers, metaphor, metaphor. And of course, if I pull it far enough, and some of you are getting good, that you can begin to pull your perceptions over your little Pee Wee Herman. Well, you remember that. Nobody seemed to like that night. I pointed out that trying to stretch the perception is like trying to use Pee Wee Herman's condom on King Kong. Even here in person, forget you people on tape, even here all I got was... But if you could pull your perception that far, you'd understand that just by me apparently making things holler, just ordinary events holler, metaphor, metaphor, that's nothing. It's to make metaphor then. It sounds like turn backwards, but it goes in another direction, is then you make metaphor turn into reality, reality, reality. It's like it went from being common reality, and then I made it into a metaphor, and then when you get good, it goes from being a metaphor into super common reality. That it almost goes back. It's not a metaphor. Who the hell needs metaphors? You can stay home and read a mystical book if this was all metaphors. If this was all some kind of spiritual, imaginary structure I'm building up, which of course it is, but if that's all it was, you could stay home. You could daydream. You could read books. Plus this would be easy, because I could say, well, it's this. And you go, oh, all right. And then you could agree or disagree. Like it or lump it. Like it or leave it. But here we go. This is the kind of thing that happens out in life. It's happened forever. Out there in the real states, in the real cities, were real tyrants and real people, which is nothing but history. Who needs that? You know, that's the past. That's a place where all this dead stuff resides. So I'm going to turn it in right quick to metaphor, but listen, it's not a metaphor. It's a fact. And it's alive. Real good tyrants, tyrannical rulers, they're clever, have a supreme weapon they've always used, and that's to make the people believe that the rulers know everything that's going on. Notice I said make them believe, which ain't much of a trick if you're a tyrant. Notice I didn't say anything to any degree of how much the ruling powers actually have to know. All you got to do to use this supreme weapon is make the people believe. Do I have to show you how easy it is? Go out to the people. Let the tyrant send out a few of the good, well-armed, husky-looking, trunk-necked palace guards to simply bust in at random. He just picks out in the phone book, here and here, go get these 3 people. It'd help if they're in the same section of the city, maybe, so the word will get around good in that one section. Plus, you'll see what I mean. He just picks them out, and so they go there, they bang open the people's door, and they got the name there. And they say, all right, John Smith. And the guy says, yeah, come with us. He goes, what'd I do? The king wants you. Why? And the guards are given instructions. You always say something like, he knows exactly what you've been up to, who you've been talking to. We know what's going on in this neighborhood. The king knows, and he grabs him, and they take him away. The family's there. And maybe he's been doing nothing. Maybe he's just an honest little worker going back and forth to work. But you know, in that kind of environment, The word quickly spreads in the neighborhood. They not only got John Smith, they got Fred Jones. What was he charged with? Well, the police didn't even say. But they stated, they looked down, they had his name, they had the address, and it was him. And they said, the king wants you because he knows what the hell you've been up to. Of course, you want to get real crude, you'd say, he knows what you've been talking about, and he knows the kind of unsavory thoughts and rebellious attitudes that you're harboring. And of course, everybody's harboring those. Which it doesn't even matter, because we're not interested just in the Fred Jones and the John Smiths. It's for the word to sweep through that whole neighborhood, that section, that they're sweeping down at midnight and grabbing up people. And they're not even giving me information. They're not saying, well, you got turned in, or we've had spies. They just said, we know what's going on. And then all the people, everybody else who got rebellious attitudes, all the people in you, not in some state, all the people in you know that you're going to die. They know that life is making you dance backwards. Your genes know that the very thing that seems to be the height of their life at this level, that is, your individuality, is going to be snuffed out, and they're back in the gene pool. The people know. They are frightened because they know that we all had unsavory, rebellious, seditious thoughts, unholy thoughts, anti-religious thoughts, anti-governmental thoughts. And if they can swoop down and get John Smith, and I lived next door for this guy for 20 years, and if he's been up to any kind of anti-government activity, I'm just an idiot. He seemed just to be the epitome of a complacent, good citizen. And if he's been up to that, not only that, and fool me, if he's been up to that, and the king knew it, God damn, I must be second or third on the list. And so then you got that whole section. It finally gets in the city, and you got everybody. It is a beautiful weapon. How do you treat yourself? It's all I can do on a good night when some of you show up and look like you're about to die. That it strikes you that at city level, this kind of thing is never used. Contraire. How does what seems to be your ruling consciousness, to seem to be the very spark, the very thing that sets you apart from a brick or a hippo, how does it treat the rest of you? At the very least, it acts as though that you've got a king, I guess, named King Curly the First, or perhaps Prince Mo. You are certainly not ruled by any regency that has any semblance, that puts out any aura, any aroma that it knows what the hell it's doing, much less that it knows what the rest of you are up to. All right, now see if you can push it and we take a metaphor in two or three other directions to look at us as a whole body. Look what I do. It's a fact. It's not open for public consumption. I'm not going to broadcast it. But I, as far as you're concerned, your life and what goes on at the city level, is I know everything. That's a fact. I know everything about you. And I can treat you when I say that. It's as true as the example that I just gave you. It's as true as the king sending out. Because some of you, and you're people, some of you out of town, I've never even seen you. Some of you people here, and then you're a group. A couple of you, I'd probably be hard-pressed right now to put a name with your face. But I could do the same thing. I could send out the troopers. And they could send word that I know exactly what's been going on with you. Is not your name so-and-so? Yeah, that's me. Come with me. In a sense, I'm doing come with me when I stand here and I try and convey some of this information and you begin to get it. It's come with me. You are under temporary arrest because I know what you've been up to. That was not the point of me bringing this out tonight. It is, of course, the possible use that you can do with yourself. But in the city, now, many of you might think, your own nervous system might think, well, there are exceptions aplenty to that in the city because there are people that just seem to be delighted with themselves, people that just seem to love themselves. They must be to themselves, their own little state. They must have a wonderful monarch. They must think they're the greatest thing going. To some who do not have that to that same degree, is everything in the city done by opposite reflections, it can appear that there must be people in the city. I can name you examples, people I know are famous figures that's got to be exempt from what you're describing. Nay, nay, nay. You're exempt from seeing it. But their people do not believe that they, whoever you can think of, some figure that you think of in history contemporaneously even, some intellectual person, a scientist, a religious leader, a statesman, that kind of guy is in charge. He knows what he's doing, and his people must be, and that is, all of him in turn, they must be in awe of him. You don't have the proper sight. The people in him do not believe that he knows everything, because he doesn't. He doesn't know everything going on in him. If he did, he'd be up here. Me and him would be in business. It'd be Smith and Jones all over, and I wouldn't have to be here. I'd be here every other night. They're not around. But notice what I was saying to you, not people in the city. A supreme weapon. Why would I bring it up if it didn't have some possible use? Is for the ruling powers to make the people believe that they know everything going on. Let's see how good you people are, since some of you I may never see again. Now forget that. Here's another one. These kind of things, if you ever noticed, I'm sure you haven't, but sometimes I'll wait till the next night to do this, and sometimes I'll wait a year to do this. But tonight we'll do them together. And those of you that suddenly fall back to city level consciousness, this is going to sound like this is almost a direct denial of what I just said. It just shows how much you know. But here's one that I didn't have planned for tonight, even as much as the others were planned. Here's another something that a revolutionist type people can do, or a revolutionist can use, and that is for the people to unconditionally and immediately admit to anything. Will throw the ruling powers also immediately off their stride and off balance. It's just to immediately, if you just get a hint, if there could be such a thing as revolutionary driven people, that the people themselves, or some number of them in there, that whenever the ruling powers or anybody that seems to be dominant to them calls them up for an explanation of what's going on here, did you do that, to even infer it, it's just to immediately go, I did it, I did it. No conditions, no excuse, just I did it, you caught me, I did it. At city level, what this does to the ruling powers, the police, the ruling powers, those that would immediately, that want to question you, which is a form of accusation, to just immediately go, just even before they can get it out of their mouth, did you do so? I did it, I did it. It makes them go, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. And then like all good bureaucrats, they didn't expect that, and they got to shuffle. It will throw them off. It will get them off their stride. It will throw them off balance. It's just to immediately, unconditionally, just as freely as you can fake it, which is, the only kind of good, sincere action is to be able to willfully intend to fake it. Is, yes, I did it. 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 Put that with the other one. I'm going to stop for tonight.